Among the first to be sent were children. Some were dispatched by impoverished parents seeking a better life for them, but others were forcibly deported. In 1618, the authorities in London began to sweep up hundreds of troublesome urchins from the slums and, ignoring protests from the children and their families, shipped them to Virginia. England's richest man was behind this mass expulsion. It was presented as an act of charity. The starving children were to be given a new start as apprentices in America. In fact, they were sold to planters to work in the fields, and half of them were dead within a year. Shipments of children continued from England and then from Ireland for decades. Many of these migrants were little more than toddlers. In 1661, the wife of a man who imported 4 Irish boys into Maryland as servants wondered why her husband had not brought some cradles to have rocked them in, as they were so little. A second group of forced migrants from the mother country were those, such as vagrants and petty criminals, whom England's rulers wished to be rid of. The legal ground was prepared for their relocation by a highwayman turned Lord Chief Justice who argued for England's jails to be emptied in America. Thanks to men like him, 50,000 to 70,000 convicts, or maybe more, were transported to Virginia, Maryland, Barbados, and England's other American possessions before 1776. All manner of others considered undesirable by the British Crown were also dispatched across the Atlantic to be sold into servitude. They ranged from beggars to prostitutes, Quakers to Cavaliers. A third group were the Irish. For centuries, Ireland had been something of a special case in English colonial history. From the Anglo-Normans onwards, the Irish were dehumanized, described as savages, so making their murder and displacement appear all the more justified. The colonization of Ireland provided experience and drive for experiments further afield, not to mention large numbers of workers coerced, transported, or persuaded. Under Oliver Cromwell's ethnic cleansing policy in Ireland, unknown numbers of Catholic men, women, and children were forcibly transported to the colonies. And it did not end with Cromwell. For at least another 100 years, forced transportation continued as a fact of life in Ireland. The other unwilling participants in the colonial labor force were the kidnapped. Astounding numbers are reported to have been snatched from the streets and countryside by gangs of kidnappers or spirits working to satisfy the colonial hunger for labor. Based at every sizable port in the British Isles, spirits conned or coerced the unwary onto ships bound for America. London's most active kidnap gang discussed their targets at a daily meeting in St. Paul's Cathedral. They were reportedly paid £2 by planters' agents for every athletic-looking young man they brought aboard. According to a contemporary who campaigned against the black slave trade, kidnappers were snatching an average of around 10,000 whites a year. Doubtless an exaggeration, but one that indicates a problem serious enough to create its own grip on the popular mind. Along with the vast numbers ejected from Britain and forced to slave in the colonies, were the still greater multitudes who went of their own free will. Those who became indentured servants in the Americas in return for free passage, and perhaps the promise of a plot of land. Between 1620 and 1775, these volunteer servants, some 300,000, accounted for 2 out of 3 migrants from the British Isles. Typically, these free-willers, as they came to be called, were the poor and the hopeful, who agreed to sacrifice their personal liberty for a period of years in the eventual hope of a better life. On arrival, they found that they had the status of chattels, objects of personal property, with few effective rights. But there was no going back. They were stuck like the tar on the keels of the ships that brought them. Some, of course, were brought by humane, even generous masters, and survived their years of